This is Gemara and Yoma Daf Yomi, the Daf for Lag BaOmer. Well, in this country, we would say a good yantiv to everyone. All the learning for this month, the month of Iyar, is sponsored. L'schos refuah shlema for Rivka Bas Basheva, as well as l'schos refuah shlema for Naftali Siva Michal Esther. Mirat Hashem, the learning of the entire Chabur should be a tremendous schos refuah shlema, as well as this week winds down. The learning has been sponsored as schos refuah shlema for Sarah Bas Kilo. We should continue hearing good news. Baruch Hashem, I'm told she's out of the ICU. She's recovering nicely. Mirat Hashem, we should soon hear that she is home, recovering completely. Of course, the rest of our Chayim men, Meveng Chaim Mesar Shalom Sivim Reiz Asar Bas Kananzli to Basim Chaysei Yisrael Ben Mindol Aliyah the parents Shalei Shalom Aznami Veshafegu Shiv Chanafal Shmo Ben Tila Dinim Chan Reiz Melchay Bas Bin Lebrach Vestov Musta Dinim Mishim Min Sivchotovio and Afigai Fesha Sivim Fegel Dver Michal Sivim Nathel Yehuva Mechamendo Ben Toba Besoy Shachali Yisrael as well as Chashidach Vataleya Bas Ita. We basically finished Yod Ches Amid Beis. We're up to Yod Tes. I'd like to just quickly read through this Mishnah again, just at the bottom of Yod Ches Amid Beis, really just to get us into the flow of things. We'll have lots of beautiful pictures today, Mirza Hashem. So it says the Mishnah at the bottom of Yod Ches Amid Beis one more time. Masru Ziknei Bezin Ziknei Kahuna Velu Beis Avtinas. They gave over the Kohen Gadol to the elders of the Kahuna, and they went up into the Beis Avtinas. Veshviu, and they made him swear. V'niftaru v'holchu lahem, and they left. V'amrulai Ishi Kohen Gadol. Ishi, as Rashi points out, is Adoni, my master, the Kohen Gadol. We are the messengers of Bezdin, and you are our messenger. And the Gemara is going to go through exactly this interesting wording, how they're making him swear in the name of the one whose presence rests on this house, obviously referring to Hashem. Not change anything. They each would cry over the terrible shvur that had to be made. If he was a Talmud Chacham, Doirish, you'd give shear. Vim lavta bicham darshan lefanav, they would give shear to him. Vim ragal likrais kairei. Vim lav kar lefanav akairin lefanav. Interesting topics. Eva zara different yamim. And Zachar ben Kavut alaim rabam mahar bekrasi lefanav vidaniel. So there's a few beautiful pictures over here. You see the Kohen Gadol practicing in the Beis Avtinas. Exactly what he had to do. The Beis Avtinas was the room that they made the Ketairis, as you see over here. And you see how he's practicing the Chafifa. As we'll see, this is one of the more difficult Avaidas. If you see very clearly over here, it's beautiful how they're depicting how they're holding the shovel in his mouth. Again, the Gemara, Mir Tashem, is going to talk about this. This is just a cute picture. You see them all crying, how they had to suspect him, and he's crying at the end that they suspected him. Here you see that if the Kohen Gadol was a Talmud Chacham, he'd give shear. He's sitting there, he's giving shear to all the Kehanim, but if not, he would give shear to him. Says the Gemara, that was the Beis Atfila, that's going to be the Gemara. Says the Gemara, now we move over to today's Daf. Daf Yotes, Tana, Lelamdoi Chafina. That what's the reason why they went into the Beis Avtinas, like we just explained? Because that was the room that they made the Ketairas, and they wanted to teach them how to do the Avaida of the Ketairas. Amar Rabba, says Rabba, Shtei Lishkos Hayla the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol had two rooms. Achas Lishkas Bar Hedjin, Achas Lishkas Beis Avtinas. One was Lishkas Bar Hedjin, of course sounds familiar to us, and one was Lishkas Beis Avtinas. We know Lishkas Bar Hedjin is where he slept. Lishkas Beis Avtinas, like we just said, was how they prepared the Ketairas. And says Rabba further, Achas B'Safan and Achas B'Daran, one was in the north, one was in the south. Now the Gemara is going into a lengthy discussion, all different rooms and gates in the Beis HaMikdash. Of course, we'll show some nice pictures, proving where these two rooms, the Lishkas Beis Avtinas and the Lishkas Bar Hedjin were. Says the Gemara, Achas B'Safan, one was in the north. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Vav Lishkais Hayu Ba'Azara, there were 6 Lishkais. There were 6 rooms, chambers in the Azara. Gimel B'Safan, Gimel B'Daran. 3 in the north, 3 in the south, Shabbatarn in the south, Lishkas HaMelech, Lishkas HaParva, Lishkas HaMadichin. 3 rooms. Now the Gemara explains, Lishkas HaMelech, what was this room of the salt? Shamayrais the Melech LeKarban. They would salt the Karbanais, Melicha. Lishkas HaParva, what was the second room? The Lishkas HaParva, Sheshamaya Molchan, Ayres Kachim. That's where they would salt the hides of all the karbanais. Val Gagon, Parva is referring to the hide. Val Gagon, on its roof, Haisa Beis Tefillah, which we saw a picture a moment ago, we'll see a picture in a second. There was a Beis Tefillah on the roof of these 3 chambers, the Kohen Gadol B'Yom Kippurim, Lishkas HaMadichem, and the third room, Shamayim Madichem Karvei Kachim. There, they would rinse off all the different karbanos, all the different parts of the karbanos. Umisham, and from there, again, let's read this carefully, and we'll see a very nice picture. Misiva oila legag. It was misiva. It went around up to the roof, referred to a circular staircase that went up to the roof of Beis HaParveh, of the Beis HaParveh. So we have these three rooms. We have a circular staircase, and then we're going to have a Beis HaTfilah mikvah on top. Again, we'll read a little more, and then we'll see all the pictures. That was in the south. Now, Gimosh Abasalfin, there were three in the north. Lishkas Ha'etz, Lishkas Ha'goyla, Lishkas Ha'gazis. Says the Gemara, Lishkas Ha'etz. What was the room of the wood? I forgot what exactly that room was used for. And this obviously should sound familiar. This was a riot that we had 2-3 days ago. That Astam Mishnah Midois is Rav Elazar ben Yaakov. The chamber of the Kohen Gadol. The room for the Kohen Gadol was behind all of them. Lishkas Kohen Gadol Haisa. That room, that Lishkas Beis HaEtzim, that was the room for the Kohen Gadol. Now the Gemara explains. Haisa Acharei Shteihem Gag. It was on top of, behind both of them, I should say, there was a roof. The Gag Shlashtan Shaveh. Again, it was this chamber, this room of the Kohen Gadol was behind both of them. Now this Mishnah that we're quoting continues, V'gag Shloshtan, and their three roofs were equal. Lishkas HaGoyla Sham, the Lishkas HaGoyla was there. Shamaya bar ha'goyla. There was a bar ha'goyla, which was a well, as we'll see in a moment. V'hagalgal nasan alav. And there was a galgal, there was a wheel on it, and we sham, and from that well, maspik and mayin l'chol hazara. That's how they got water for the entire hazara. Lishas hagazis. This is another one of the rooms of the hewn stones. Shaimis Sanhedrin shayisal yosheves. That's where the Sanhedrin would sit. V'danas kohanim, they would judge the kohanim. And how we explained, as we're talking about the Sanhedrin as they judge, we speak over a din umishin himself by apostle. If any kohen was found to be apostle, hayalavish chayrin, he would put on dark garments, black, and he will leave. If he was found to be disqualified, he would walk out. Says the Gemara, the one that's kosher, he would enter and he would do that vaida with all the other kohanim. That's the end of these 6 rooms. Now we continue. Shiva Sha'arim Hayusham. There's Shiva Sha'arim, there were 7 gates. The Ibazar and the Agara, Zara, Gimel B'Safim, Gimel Daran, Ba'achad B'Mizrach, 3 in the north, 3 in the south, and 1 in the east. Says the Gemara. I'm sorry, I read that incorrectly. Let's go up a moment. One more time. I think I skipped it actually. Period. Achas B'Daraim. Now there's one in the south. Let's remember, what's Achas B'Daraim? We're in the middle of a lengthy discussion. Let's just scroll up for a moment. We started off in the Gemara that Rav Papa taught us that there were 2 roofs for the Kohen Gadol. One was Parhedrin, one was Lishkas Beis Avtinas, one was north, one was south. So we just finished describing the one that was north. Now says the Gemara, Achas B'Daraim, there's one in the south. Tetanan, Shiva Sharim Ayuba Azara. There were 7 gates in Azara, Gimel 7 Gimel Daran, Mizrach. 3 in the north, 3 in the south, and 1 in the east. Sheba Adaraim, the one in the south, Shar Hadlaka, was the gate of the Hadlaka, of the lighting. Sheni Loi, the second one to it, Sheni Loi Shara Carbon. That's where the carbonates went through. Shlishi Loi Shara Mayim, the water. Sheba Mizrach in the east, Shar Nikanar, Ushtei Lishkoi Sayusham. There was Shar Nikanar, then there were 2 rooms there. Achaz B'Minav, Achaz B'Smail. One on the right and one on the left. And again, hopefully this will be a little bit easier to depict when we see a picture of each one of these things in a moment. But again, there are 2 rooms, one on the right, one on the left. Achas Lishkas Pinchas HaMelabish. One of those rooms was a room for someone called Pinchas the Melabish, which hopefully we should pull up a memory of this from Shkalim, which we saw. This was where they would name, this was the Pinchas, that he was the one that dressed like Kehanim. V'achas Lishkas Oisei Chavitim. One was the room they made the chavitim, which of course also we learned in Shkalim, was the carbon that the Kohen Gadol brought every day. All other Kohanim brought on the first day of his service ever. Shabbat Safan in the north was Shar Nitzutz, was the gate of the Nitzutz, of the sun rays, which we'll see more about that. Binyan Achsad Haya. So over there was a Achsadra, which is in a pavilion, Va'aliyah b'nuya al gabav, and there was a second floor on top of it. V'sham koyanim shaymim mimala, v'leviyim l'mata. There was an elevated area, so the kohanim were on top, and the leviyim were on the bottom. V'shalafnim imenu are now moving inside. What was inside? Achel, v'sheni loy shar. Carbon was again. The second one was to the gate of the carbon. Shlishi loy shar beis ha'moikad, which we learned extensively about a few days ago. Beis ha'moikad. Let's remind yourself the room that had the fire, the room with the 4 rooms inside of it. There was the Lechem Hapanim room, there was room for the lambs, all opening into the Beis HaMoikod. V'tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Chamesh Tfilos V'asar Kadeshim Tevel Kohen Gadol. There were 5 times the Kohen Gadol went into the mikvah, 10 times he washed his hands and his legs, something that we'll see later in the Masechta more about Tevel Kohen Gadol. U'mikadesh B'ay B'yayim. And he made himself holy that day, the day of Yom Kippur. V'kulan, and all these times was B'kodesh alagag, was in the holy on the roof of Beis HaParva, the roof of the Beis HaParva. That's where the Kohen Gadol went to the mikveh each time. Chutz mizu shayisa b'chol, except for the first time he went to the mikvah, that was in the chol, which was where al gabi shara mayim, on top of the gate of the water. Ubitzad lishkasai haisa, and it was next to the Kohen Gadol's own room. So from here we see this is the end of the brisa that the Kohen Gadol had one room in the north and one room in the south. Says the Gemara, concluding Rav Papa's statement, I don't know which was which. I'm not sure it was Lishkas Bar Hedjin nor Lishkas Bisaftina south, or vice versa. Lishkas Bisaftinas Bisaf and Lishkas Bar Hedjin Bedarim. And Rav Papa concludes, Umistavrad Lishkas Bar Hedjin Bedarin Havai. It makes a lot of sense that Lishkas Bar Hedjin was in the south. My taima, Marktim Koi. The reason being is that he would get up each and every morning very early, Umezach es raglov, and he would cover over his feet, which is an interesting word. It doesn't really mean cover his feet. Rashi and the Mefarshim here explain means that he went to the bathroom, Kohen Gadol, first thing in the morning, v'tavel, and then he would go into the mikvah, v'azal fine, and then he would go to the north, v'gamar chafina, and then he would fill up his hands in the Beis Avtinos, like we've seen. Then he would come into the Beis Hamikdash, then he would the Avid Avaida, and he would do Avaida the entire day. As it got late in the evening, what would happen? Madu alei, they would sprinkle him, we know, with the ashes of the Parah Aduma, and then he would go back to the south, and double he'd go to the mikvah, and then he would go rest. So says the Gemara, this is a raya, says Rav Papa, then it makes a lot of sense that to learn, meaning basically we don't know which room was which. We don't know where was Lishkas Beis Avtinos, where was Lishkas Bar Hedron. So Gemara wanted to prove it makes sense that Lishkas Bar Hedron is in the south, meaning it was closer to where the Kohen Gadol slept. So he got up, washed his hands, used the bathroom, and went straight to the mikvah by the Lishkas Bar Hedron in the south, and not vice versa, says the Gemara. You know why? The Amr Lishkas Bar Hedron b'Tzafain. If it was the opposite, that the Lishkas Bar Hedron was in the north, and the Lishkas Beis Avtinos was in the south, you know what would happen? If you got up in the morning, use the bathroom, then he would have to go all the way across the Beis Hamikdash to the south, he would have to go to the mikvah there, and then when he would finish, what would he do? Then they would sprinkle ash on him, and you go all the way back to the other side of the Beis Hamikdash. Again, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Gomer Chafina means he did the practice chafifa with his hands. He would go to the mikvah, and then he would rest. So the Gemara brings a proof where things are, because it makes more sense to have the rooms closer to where he was. So he'd wake up, use the bathroom, go to the mikvah, travel across the Beis Hamikdash to the other side, and then finish that way, and not to say that he had to go back and forth. Says the Gemara, I'm sorry, in the end it says the Gemara, it doesn't make sense to say it the other way. So the Gemara is bringing a bit of a, we'll call it a logistical proof, that it has to be the Lishkas Bar Hedron was in the south, and the Beis Avtinos was in the north, because was then it made more sense that he would wake up in the south by the licious base of licious parhedrin and not vice versa. But on this says the Gemara, what's your raya? Maybe not. Maybe we purposely would want him to have to do more work. You know why? If he's a tzduki and he'd be like, this is crazy. Maybe he'll give in and he won't be a tzduki. He'll do that vaida properly. Inami, a secondary says the Gemara, so that he shouldn't become a haughty. He's a kohen gadol. The whole world is on his shoulders. So we don't want him to be such a bal gaivas. We make him travel a little bit. Says the Gemara, because if you're not going to say this, why don't they just put the two rooms next to each other? Or why don't we just say that it's going to be enough for him to sleep in and practice doing his hands close to his room? So what's the reason that the rooms are on two opposite sides of the Beis HaMikdash? Therefore, says the Gemara, must be the opposite, that he's going to travel across, that the Lishkas Parhedrin was in the north, Lishkas Beis Haftinas is in the south, and therefore the opposite, we want it to be inconvenient, and therefore he'll have to work a little bit hard. Which, again, I'm sure many people are a bit bothered. What was the Havamina? What was the Teretz? Again, we're trying to bring a proof where everything was, based on how easy, difficult, what would be more conducive to our avodah. Before we continue, let's see some beautiful pictures. Here you see, and maybe now, whoever has time should go back and look at the Gemara. Everything will be a bit more clear. You see those three rooms, and you see that the roofs were equal, and you see on top of it was based on Tefillah Shabbat. Here's another picture. This one just got a little blurry. You see over here the same thing, that the based on Tefillah Shabbat says Machlekes Rashi and Tais is exactly how those three rooms were. Over here we saw the Mesiba. You saw that circular staircase going up to the second floor. Here's the Lishkas Hagazas, Lishkas Hakaila. You actually get a nice perspective. These are on opposite sides. This is outside, this is inside. As you see the Mizbeach over here, this was the Lishkas HaGaila, like the Gemara said, that had this water wheel on top of it, and this is how they would draw water for everyone in the Azara. Now we go to the Sha'arim, we have Sha'ar Amayim, Sha'ar B'chayri, Sha'ar Adelek, continuing with Sha'ar Nikanar. And the Gemara said that next to Sha'ar Nikanar, remember there were these two rooms, one with Lishkas Chavitim on one side, Lishkas Pinchas HaMalbish on the other side, and now we have a beautiful depiction. This was Lishkas Pinchas Beis HaMalbish, looks almost like a store. You see that there have all the clothing there waiting to dress like Kehanim. This was Lishkas Beis Chavitin, which you actually click this picture. They did such a beautiful job. You see on the side how they're frying it, like we learned, it has to both be fried and has to then be baked in the oven. And then as we move along over here, you have the Sha'ar Anitza, Sha'ar Karban, Sha'ar Beis HaMoikad, with this circular ladder going up to the second floor, like we saw. And that's the Aliyah. And now we're on the top view. As you come, the Kohen Gadol would come up, and you see over here, this was the room. This was the Bishkas Beis Kohen Gadol, Beis Haftinas, and this is where he would go to the mikvah. And finally, over here, you see that the Sha'ar Amayim was on the top, the Beis Tefillah was on top, and now let's continue. Says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, Yutes Amar Aleph. V'amr lo yishen Kohen Gadol, leimet avit shufta d'Ravuna Brei d'Rav Yeshua. D'Amar Ravuna Brei d'Rav Yeshua, Hani Kohani Shlucha d'Rachmaninu. The Kohanim are the Shluchim of Hashem. Tiyam Shlucha d'Daninu. If you're going to tell them that there are Shluchim of Bezdin moving along Tameh Beis, Mika Midi Danan lo Matzi leMevad, V'Shlucha d'Dan Matzi Mevad. How could that be? We ourselves can't do the Avodah, and it's going to come out that the Kohen Gadol could do the Avodah for us? That can't be. So must be the Kohen Gadol the Shliach of Hashem. Answers the Gemara, no. No, the Shvuah just is saying that the Shvuah is on our understanding and the way that the Bezdin understands it. Meaning, Rashi explains, is we don't want a Kohen Gadol to say, oh, that's what I thought you meant. No, we tell him we're making you a Shvuah based on our das. So you can't come with any convoluted explanations. Of course, this is all to make sure that Sedukim don't get involved. Which we know, unfortunately, it didn't work so well. Like we saw earlier, that in the second Beis HaMikdash, there was basically a Kohen Gadol every single year. Says the Gemara, because each one died when he was a Saduki. Who What's the reason? Shachashtu a Stuki. They suspect him to be a Stuki. And he would cry, they would cry, Demar of Shuban Levi, it's a terrible thing to suspect someone else. So the mere fact that they had to suspect the Kohen Gadol, they would cry as well. What's the reason? Like we keep on pointing out, we want to make sure he's not at Stuki. What's the detail of Stuki that we're going to deal more with later in the Masechta? Says the Gemara, the way that it works is they had to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, then pour the Ketairis on the ash, not do it outside and walk in with it ready on fire. Something that we're going to see, that we're going to darshan from Sukkim. So that was the shvua that they made him make. Tan Rabbanan says the Gemara Ma'aseh Zuki Echad she'eskim mibachos ve'echnes, and he did it wrong. He outside prepared everything, put the ketairis on the coals, walked in with it. B'yitzi asai, as he was leaving, he was happy. He felt he beat God. I got it right. Simcha gedayla. He bumped into his father. We're still afraid. What this means? Did his father mean to tell him that we should be fearful of the regular good Jews? Did it mean that his father said that we're only stukim on the outside, but deep down you shouldn't have done what you did? But Amr Lai says the Gemara called Yoma. I'm sorry, Amr Lai, his son, the Kohen Gadol, that just came out from Lifnai of Lifnim, the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He came out and he's so happy. Seemingly, he finally did what he always waited his whole life to do. Kol Yoma, he tells his father, my entire life I see mitzdayer al mikrazeh. I was always paying that says kiba onon era al kapayres, because with the cloud I should appear as the kapayres. That's the drush that Stu can make. Learning they have to go in with the cloud, you have to pour it outside. Hey masay yaveladei vakimena. Obviously, this is reminiscent of the famous Rav Akiva, how he cried out and he was Meiser Nefesh, saying, my whole life I waited to be Mekayim the pasuk, to give over my whole life to God, and this is what the Tzeduki was saying. So Tzeduki told his father, Achshav, now finally, Shepali Yadi, I had the opportunity, like Amenu. Amru, they said, it wasn't many days. He died. He was thrown into a garbage heap, and there were worms coming out of his nose. The terrible and gruesome death of a Tzeduki. And some say the story was slightly different, that then on the way out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, he was hit. The Tani Rav Chia came in, call Nishma Ba'azara. They heard a loud clap, a loud bang in the Azara. What was the bang? Sheba Malach L'chayvte al Panav. A Malach came and slapped him in the face. They found like a shoe mark, a rounded foot between his shoulders. Again, a different way of the gruesome death of the Tzeduki. Says the Gemara is finishing up. Amr Rav Zcharia ben Kavutal. Masni le Rav Chanan bar Rav Lechia bar Rav Kamei de Rav. Amr Rav Zcharia ben Kifutal, not Kivutal, Kifutal. Umachla Rabbi Yodeh Kivutal. V'nemalei Meimar. Why do you make a motion to him that you got the name wrong? Why don't you just tell him you got the name wrong? Says the Gemara, Kriyishma Vekari. He was middle of reading Kriyishma, and that's why he just mentioned to him that you said the name wrong. Says the Gemara, he's middle of reading Kriyishma. Me Shari, is he allowed to make any mention, any gesture? You're not allowed to motion with your eyes. You can't motion with your lips. You can't even point with your finger. If you do any of these things, that these motions, winks, nods, all of Akasav Aimer Veloy Oisi Karasa Yaakov. We have Loisi Karasa Yaakov. It says the pasuk, we did not call out to me, Yaakov. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. If he wasn't reading Kriyishma, you should have corrected him. If he's reading Kriyishma, how do you even mention emotion and anything? Answers the Gemara, like Kasha, Habibarak Krisha, and Habibarak Sheni. In the first pasuk, he can't do anything, can't even motion. In the second parsha, then he's allowed to at least motion. Tan Rabbanan, finishing up on the theme of Kriyishma, V'dibarta bam, the pasuk says you should speak in them. Bam, that you should speak in them, but not during davening. Only in them, in Torah, you're allowed to speak, but don't speak of anything else. Make them keva, make the Torah set, and don't make it just a rai. Amar Rava, someone who talks trivial and baseless conversations, he's over in a pasuk that says you should always be talking about Torah, and nothing else. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar over belav, it's a lav that you're over shenemar kedvar yagihem lo yuchal ish ledaber. How careful we have to be, not only about the words that we chas v'shalom talk negatively, God forbid, talk during davening, but even just stupidity and nonsense. We have to even be careful of those words. We're just going to learn the Mishnah, and then we'll conclude it, and we'll pick up tomorrow. If the Kohen Gadol starts falling asleep, they would bang him with their fingers, sreida. Perhaps it was like that, a snap. We'll see in the Gemara. I might stand up. Put your feet on the ground. Of course, he was barefoot. Marble floors. Wake yourself up. And they would keep a rake till the Zman Shechita starts. I'm sorry, let's actually just do it right now. My Sreida, Amar Rav Yehuda Sarsa Dida. It was the Sarah, which is the co-wife, meaning it was this finger. How they made a snapping sound, which says they banged it at some level. Mai Gaidel. He showed him how he made this tremendous sound. Taisus learns, like we just said, the way that we snapped the middle finger, and it was able to make a tremendous sound. Let's just see two more pictures. This is the first shot that it's the first finger, and this is the second shot that it's the middle finger. You snap it with that middle finger, and Amir Tashem will pick it up from here tomorrow.